That's a good feeling. And you know why you're pleased that we're here this evening? We'd have been really fed up if you hadn't been able to be there and see the show. Have you seen how many people were there? Yeah, well, there's been a bit fed up to have been outside and had to in front of the port and harbour entrance and just wait. So yeah, it's a really, really nice ending, and coming up the harbour channel, it's pretty incredible. At the nightfall with the lights and so on, some good pictures probably, good images. My head is full of some extraordinary pictures. And everybody here just to see me, it's, that's the Vendée for you. It's not something you ever get used to. You've had a good last day, 24 hours at sea. Was it complicated with the wind and quite a bit of shipping? Well, the last night was not that easy. Strong winds, up to 40 knots downwind. The sea conditions, sea picked up a bit too, and quite a few cargo vessels around. They seem to be in a bit of a hurry to make way so that they could continue their route to avoid bad conditions. So I was kind of slaloming between the boats and so on. Had to be quite careful. But with the AIS system, I was able to kind of find my way through pretty well. But at one point in the night, my AIS alarm started sounding, beeping, and I looked that there was a trimaran called Oman, 26 knots, a mile just off my bow, and in fact there was Damien Foxhall on board, and a crew of people that I know pretty well, so we had a bit of a chat. It was good fun. They congratulated me for the Vendée Globe, and they continued on to Lorient. Yeah, Armel, you look calm, serene, and calm and collected. How was the race this time? Much different from 4 years ago. Well, the finish 4 years ago, I know a little bit more now. You know a little bit more what to expect. You know what you have to go through when you get back. It's not quite the same emotion because each race is different. 4 years ago, it was really, really hard at the end of the race. Didn't have enough to eat left, really. The weather conditions were really tough towards the end. So it was really a bit of a deliverance to get back. And this time I really wanted to make sure I could get in before it was no longer able to get into the harbour and so on. So yeah, really kind of had to keep going to do as best I can for the best result. 78 days. It's quite a different course as well to race this time than 4 years ago. There's a little bit of disappointment, of course. I'd have liked to have finished better placed. But the course is still different and so on. Better performance this time, of course. And so, of course, I'm naturally very, very pleased. Nevertheless, 2 days and 4 hours less than last time. It's sure that this time we've progressed. We've made progress at least. Since 2006, racing in the Armel class, I've made progress. I've learned a lot. We've worked really hard over the last couple of years to prepare the preparation for the run-up to the Vendée Globe. When I was setting out at the beginning, I, very trusting, trusted a lot of confidence in the material, the equipment, and so on. We've worked with François, Jean-Pierre. We've really trained hard and worked hard. And we knew before setting out that we'd, really worked hard in preparing and training for the event. So after Cape Finisterre and so on, it was the three of us were kind of sailing pretty neck and neck. It was a shame that things changed afterwards, but And the fight was on a strong fight on between François and myself. One of my greatest satisfactions on this Vendée was the rhythm that we actually managed, the pace we managed to maintain in the Southern Ocean. Quite different again to the race 4 years ago. Last time I had to kind of reduce speed a little bit because I took a little bit longer to adapt to those conditions in the Southern Ocean. Either with François and Jean-Pierre this time really, and with Bernard, we really set quite a strong pace. That was really fast. After Cape Horn, the course had been really, really good. Just a couple of hours behind François. And I thought, okay, well, you know, it was 3 or 4 days ahead of the reference time. So, you know, better than the 4 years ago. So any questions now from the room, from the floor? There are a couple of microphones about, so if you raise your hand if you have a question. Armel, hello. Strategically, was the difference really all played out at the Cape Horn? What happened for you at that particular moment in time around the Cape Horn? Well, from my point of view, the race, I've been trying to go back over it and analyze the situation over the last couple of days. I was just 1.25 hours behind François, 30 miles or so just after the Cape Horn. And I kind of made quite a bit of good way. I managed to catch up a little bit. And at one point, he was just, 10 miles away from according to my AIS, and we were downwind, and I was jibing, had a big Jenica up. And at one point in the night, had the sea was strong, but some of the lashing was, well, I'm going to get a bit technical, but, that's what it's all about as well. I had my lashing of the Jenica, which broke. So the sail kind of ran up the cable at the front, 25 knots. It was impossible to actually roll the sail, fill the sail. So we had to find some way of bring the foot back and relash. Took me a couple of hours, a good couple of hours to get that sorted out. So François, during that time, he wasn't, waiting. He didn't wait for me. He kind of took off a little bit, and that's where he managed to. So I kind of got caught up in the anticyclone at that time in the high pressure system, and that kind of accounted for a little bit of a gap, which we continued going up the Atlantic. I decided to take off slightly more to the west. So at one point, I did actually come back a little bit closer, a little bit more come into contact. Tried to, and that was at the point at which really I think I felt that there was a possibility of gaining miles again, with a bit of reaching, with some steady winds behind. And the way I'd kind of planned things and was seeing things, I was quite sort of easy with that. But the wind started backing a little bit. I was kind of changed tack. Half an hour afterwards, well, I was back again. There was no way. Okay, so I changed tack again. So I tried heading off a little bit more to, so I was almost really straight easterly wind for 5 hours, and it was just really not what I was expecting. And when the wind changed direction again, well, I was able to get back onto a better heading. But by that time, François had pulled even further ahead, and I think really I realized that it was a little bit tough because I realized it was an important point, a key point in the race. It's just a series of small events which come together, which seem to be details, but which over a certain number of hours, over a certain amount of time, give a net result, which means that you actually lose the advance that you might have, or the chance that you had really to get back into the race. But that's what it's all about, the Vendée Globe and offshore racing, ocean racing. That's what it's all about. So I just had to, there was nothing I could do at that point. Thanks very much, Armel, for this explanation. Any other questions? I asked a question to the Tour de France. My question to you, would you prefer to have really beaten the record and to be second, or to win? What's the most important thing for you? Getting within 80 days? Well, of course, prefer to win every time. That's what I set out to do, and that's what I've been working for the past few years. So, of course, there is naturally a little bit of disappointment in not having made it to first place. You know, it's my second Vendée Globe, and finishing second, you know, it's a bit sort of, you know, I'm not embarrassed about my result at all. It's not one major weather option. It's a series of little things that may have made the difference. But various passage points, there have been, you know, the equator, Cape of Good Hope, and so on. There are a number of various points you can analyze things. After so many days and just 3 hours difference, well, you know, I mean, it does nevertheless reduce the level of disappointment, because it's not a bad result. But obviously, I'd have preferred to have won. But I try to be rational and analyze things, and think I've understood. And I'll probably understand better still over the next few days. But it's a really fine race from the very start. I'm 99% really pleased with the race, my performance.
Okay.
I'm from Voile Magazine. Hello. You said your boat is very close in speed. Your boat's pretty much one design. Would you have preferred to have had the other boat? Or do you regret anything, any choices you made before the start? No, I have no regrets about the choices I made. Boats are, of course, very, very close. The mold is, it's not so easy to see when they're actually berthed in a marina, but the ballasts, the shrouds, certain differences which are quite important in certain conditions. But in the lighter air, you know, I could have a sail configuration which was maybe gave me a little bit more performance, better performance. But I don't have any regrets about the choices I made. You can always do more, but I don't think it really played out on the differences in the speed between the two boats, each having advantages and disadvantages, certain conditions where it might have been better or weaker. We all have our weaknesses and our strengths. The course actually played out for the way I've seen it, the way I see it, one or two weather options and placements and decisions made in relation to weather strategy. Have you been surprised? Are you surprised by François? Yes and no. I knew that he'd really prepared his race really well with his race. He's well advised. He's got a good team, and it's not just luck. And all the training that happens in Port La Forêt, the last Transat, the B2B single-handed race. He's at the top of the list in the IMOCA rankings. So any of the experience that he's nothing to be embarrassed about in terms of experience compared to someone like Jean-Pierre or myself. He's really well prepared. I was very surprised, however, by the very, very small number of mistakes that he's made. I mean, he's looking in from the outside. It's just not possible that he's just never let go. He, particularly in the South Atlantic, and the first gates and so on, as he went through, thinking, there's bound to be a moment he's going to make a mistake, let go. No, never happened. He hung on in there, really good, put up a good fight. Just a few of you who have sailed around the world that way, like that. Are you conscious, aware of the fact that are you actually aware? Do you think, are you seriously aware of just how exceptional such an experience is? Are you actually really aware of having done something so astonishing? Actually, no, not really. For the moment, it's not the. We've just arrived. We just crossed the finishing line. Tomorrow, we'll be reading the press, and it's going to be François, the winner, and I'm number two. There's always a first one, a winner. It's like in other sports. You remember the first, but not necessarily the second. It wasn't a good weekend, France lost, in reference to some other sport. But in the weeks ahead, we'll be going over what we've done and take time to go over it properly. The number of miles per day, the average speeds attained, 78 days. 4 years ago, I took 89 days. It's for the moment, I've not really realized. We've really sailed this race really intensely, and it actually time kind of flew past, We didn't really stop to think and didn't take much of a breather. Armel, I'm not going to bother you for that long. When you look at your track and those of François, you've actually sailed fewer miles than François. Your paths and your track was often tighter than François'. There you are. You can say that you can be disappointed, but you can't be unhappy. Yes, of course, I'm happy. Yes, of course. I'm happy for myself, for my team, for Banque Populaire, who have been supporting me for quite some time. Of course, I cannot be anything but happy. I think of all the skippers who are there, who have come to welcome us. I think of Marco, Marguimo, and Quito de Pavan, Samantha Davis, who sent me a message earlier on. I know what it's like to have to retire and not make it to the end of the race. And so, of course, Can't really talk about disappointment in my position. There's a great deal of happiness, of course. But of course, when you're out on the water, yeah, maybe I could have attacked a little bit more, put more pressure on in the high pressure systems. I had a code 0, which is a good sail for the lighter air. In those conditions, I could sail quite quickly, actually, quite fast. The St. Helena High, a few moments of doubt, but now, in fact, never really panicked. Or it's not that easy, but in the end, didn't actually lose out an awful lot, and I did reasonably well in that situation. I was pretty pleased at the Crozet Gates. We had to attack from in the west, sorry. It was quite a nice technical trick to pull off, but thought it might have given even better result. But still, I managed to pick up a few miles there. Yes, so from time to time there were one or two tactical tricks to pull off, but and that's what I really enjoyed. That's why I sail, because you can play with the weather. There are strategies to use. Various options to try. That's what I go for. You can never achieve what you might wish to achieve perfectly, but I think that François probably just achieved came closer to an ideal course. West France newspaper. At any time, was there any precise moment in time when you thought, oh no, this is, this, yeah, I'll never be able to, over the last couple of days, for example, catch up with François? I'm sorry, I didn't catch the last one, the last bit. We'll get it in the answer, don't worry. Well, for me, the race, well, in the doldrums, I thought it might have been able to use that to kind of play around with that, and perhaps also the St. Helena High, the people in Lorient, I mean, all over the place, there were people kind of praying for me, but, it just wasn't enough, weren't praying hard enough. No, I mean, seriously, when I started looking at the various options and that the St. Helena High, well, I was, going to go keep west of the Azores, archipelago. It wasn't really clearly southwesterly, but, I had 100 miles to make up, and he was sailing fast, and he was making no mistakes. It's one or two moments when there are facts like that you have to deal with. You never give up anyway, and you can never let anything go. Anything can happen. I mean, as we see today, really, quite honestly, if I'd been, within 20 miles of François this afternoon, it would have been very, very stressful. There wasn't much wind at the end of the finishing line. It would have been different in his way, his approach to the finish. But from the Cape Verde Islands, well, it's becoming pretty clear that it was going to be difficult.
You had some trouble with your sails. Can you explain a little bit more about the technical problems you had during the race, and did they actually have any impact on the end result?
Ok, j'ai compris.
I've made progress in English throughout the Vendée Globe, but I am going to answer in French. So there you can make great progress in both geography and in English doing a Vendée Globe. It's just like being at school. The problems in the sails that I had, the problems with the sails. had a Jenica that got stuck in the Pacific. Can't remember exactly when, but between two of the gates, the East Pacific. So when the Jenica was stuck on the hook, which wouldn't unhook, and we were setting off on a reach in strong winds with the sails stuck at the top, that wasn't the best sort of situation. And of course, it could always unroll, and which would have severely slowed the boat. So you end up having to go up the mast and unhook it, which is not an easy task to have to carry out. I was pretty lucky actually, because there was just one particular point the wind was started to drop just before it was going to change direction, because it was going to back, and that gave me the time to be able to go up the mast. And then there was a problem with the lashing on my big Jenica, and the lashing broke in the Le Maire Strait. So I lost. That took time, of course. After the equator, after the doldrums, my Genoa was stuck at one particular point. The Genoa is the biggest sail that we use for sailing upwind. And so when the wind changes direction back, so we bring it down. And I wasn't able to do that, so I lost, it compromised my speed. Those are the sorts of problems I had with sails. I didn't lose any sails. None of the sails tore or anything, so there's more problems with hooks rather than the sails themselves. But of course, now we're back. We'll look into that, and over the next few weeks, look into that and try and sort the problems out. So over to Claire.
On day 5 had problems with his engine and his hydro generators throughout the race, and now we're learning that you had problems with your sails, but both of you played poker on the Vendée Globe Live and never told us of your problems. So do you think if you had been more open about the situation, you would have been giving Gabart a psychological advantage, or you would have lost something, or it's because this is the first we hear of, because we've had 78 days of everything's great, I'm really happy, it's a fantastic race, got no problems at all, and then all of a sudden Gabart's had loads of problems, you've had loads of problems, and is it poker?
Fais court.
Compris? I didn't understand all of it, but so the question is that I asked François Léon. Basically, in fact, both of you really had problems like others, and the only message we ever got back from you that life was beautiful, everything was rosy, the racing was great. But in fact, of course, you have had problems. Is that the tactical choice? Well, it's not making even weaker points out of our weaknesses. It's a kind of, it's part of the game that you play. I mean, it's part of the job we're there to do. In terms of performance, it doesn't necessarily penalize me that much. I didn't have any really major technical problems, in fact, of course, which I was keeping quiet or anything. When I say everything was fine on board, I mean, yeah, there were always some things to be done and things to do, the odd thing here and there, but nothing major to repair. But, I've had one or two tricky moments and so on, but it's part of the race, really. And, the toolbox is pretty much open all the time, and there's always a little thing to fiddle about and fix and so on. have all sorts of solutions, that can be used. We had a support bracket for a hydro generator, which broke in the third day of the race. There's been a lot of discussion in the race, actually, on the of hydro generators and so on. Of course, think of Bernard and Stam. I think it wasn't actually the hydro generators which caused the problem themselves, but the mounting system and the bracket system they're mounted onto. When we go pretty fast, the brackets tended to let us down when we sail fast. But we managed to fix something and make something ourselves, so on, with composite materials, and made something. We managed to fix it, and it's held out for the rest of the race. Last question for Armel. And people for your communication people from Banque Populaire, of course, are wanting to get their hands on you. So how are you, really? Well, compared to 4 years ago, a couple of years after the press conference, a couple of hours after the press conference 4 years ago, I was kind of collapsed almost. But, I had a good night's sleep, in better form than I was at the same point the last race. Yeah, I'm fine. Pleased to be here, pleased to have finished, pleased to have crossed the finishing line. I have to kind of go back over all of the emotion of it all, and really thank you to all my team and to Banque Populaire, who are continuing to provide their support. The Route du Rhum on a big trimaran, so we'll have a bit of a rest, but there are loads of projects piling up behind, so it's great. Make the most of I'm a happy sailor. Really, really pleased with François as well, of course. He really deserves his victory. Well done to François. There's a smile of Armel Le Cléac'h. Bravo, Armel.
Et voilà, et avec les Stones, hein? Voilà, rendez-vous demain, le live, hein? Bien entendu, il y a encore des navigateurs en mer, hein? Bien entendu, hein? Allez Armel, profite bien de cette première nuit, le steak frites, important, hein? C'est fait déjà? Bravo Armel. Salut, merci à vous, à demain, 12h30.